And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Very excited to have back on Mehdi Hasan, award-winning journalist, the creator of Zeto, which is must see. Read the articles, watch them online. Mehdi, welcome back. There's so many other credits, but I want to just get right to the conversation, to be honest, because most people know you by now. So nice to see you. How you been?
I've been good. I've been good. I mean, we're in dark times, unfortunately, both at home and abroad. We've got kind of an election with a horrible choice at home, and we've got an ongoing genocide, I would argue, in the Middle East, an expanded war to Lebanon. It's not looking good. People are disillusioned. They're demoralized. I think people can't wait for this election to be over. And obviously, we want the violence in the Middle East to be over. But unfortunately, Dean, for you and I who do content, who are journalists, there's a lot going on. There's no rest for the wicked, as they say.
There is. And I look forward to election day ending so my phone stops getting text messages from Harris, give me $5. Walls, give me $5. Ruben Gallego, give me $5. People I've never heard of, random people just text. They've sold my phone number to anybody who's looking for money, apparently. Text me, and I never respond yet. They keep doing it.
I always enjoy the YouTube ads of them, because you see like these big statesmen like Barack Obama turns up and saying, folks, you got to give $5 right now. I just love to be in the room when they film those ads. It's like
That'd be fun.
Barack Obama, one of the most famous presidents in 100 years of American history, and he's standing begging for $5 on YouTube. I love it.
That's how it works, because then most people don't give 5. They give more. So, but let's talk, first of all, Zeto, 6 months old. Congratulations. It has really grown. There's a great article in the Washington Post all about it. Has it been as you expected?
I mean, no, both in a positive and a negative way. Positively, it's done much better than we thought it would do. We are doing way better in terms of subscribers. We have over 250,000 subscribers globally.
Oh, it's
tens
great.
of thousands of paid subscribers. We're ahead of all of our targets. And, actually, it's enjoyable, Dean, to be your own boss, to be not have to look over your shoulder or have to look up and get approval from on high. Freedom has never tasted so good for me as a journalist. So that's the fun, positive part. The fact that we're doing well and we have this freedom, editorial freedom that I've never had in my career before. But the negative side is I'm a journalist, Dean. I'm not a business person. It doesn't fill me with joy to have to look at like HR contracts and payroll and, are we in compliance with all the various state regulations and all the parts of running a business that, I'm not a fan of, let's put it that way.
And what about the thrill and challenges of subscriber-based funding?
Yes.
You do something great and you get a lot of subscribers, then you do something that people don't like and you start losing some of the paid subscribers. And then you have to make these difficult decisions. How do you navigate that?
It's a great point. And I remember a lot of people who went independent and joined Substack, and Zeto is on the Substack platform. I'm going to do a shameless plug, Zeteo.com.
Of course.
Check it out, Zeteo.com. We are like everyone else on that platform. I remember a lot of people went to Substack and said, well, this is why we're independent, unlike corporate media. And there is an independence, right? You don't have to worry about, shareholders. You don't have to worry about advertisers. You have this direct relationship with the subscribers. But let's not lie to ourselves. No one's really, really, really independent of any external pressure, because of course a lot of people then start just giving their subscribers what they want and creating another echo chamber. We're not doing that, right? Obviously, I am in line with my subscribers. I'm not throwing content at them that they hate or that they would find completely objectionable, I hope. But at the same time, we're trying to have conversations. We're trying to have debates and discussions. I have people I have people, who are contributors to Zeto who are on the left. I have people who are on the center left. I have people who are more centrist. I don't have right wingers for obvious reasons, but we are trying to have a debate discussion within the kind of confines of left, liberalism, progressivism. What's the right direction for this country? What's the best foreign policy? What are the best options at the ballot box? And look, some people, we live in an age, Dean, and you know this from your callers, you know it from online. A lot of people are very tribal right now. It's my way or the highway. It's give me exactly what I want or I'll go somewhere else. And, that is why we end up with online echo chambers. And I don't want Zeto to be an echo chamber. So yes, I'm independent in the sense that I'm not basing my opinions based on kind of money, people paying me. But, it bothers me when people unsubscribe. Of course it does. I read the comments. But A, that's part of the business. And B, I'm not going to stop saying the truth because people unsubscribe, right? I'm not going to stop saying what I believe to be true. You can disagree with me in good faith. But otherwise, then I might as well have just stayed in corporate media. Like, what's the difference? And no one's really independent. There's no point changing lanes so you don't have to worry about advertisers, but then spend all your time worrying about subscribers. I think you just got to say what's right and hope that people in good faith will stick with you, even if they don't agree with you on every issue.
What I find very interesting, and I don't see a lot of it, but we all remember this, is like someone could like everything. And then one day I write an article they don't like, and I'm the devil. You're
Yes,
the worst. What is
100%.
wrong with you? And I'm
Oh,
like, you just loved me. I have
yeah.
receipts of your past tweets and emails. Now I'm the worst person. And I've seen this with elected officials on the left. I've seen it with people,
Yep.
AOC. And I'm like, what happened to us as a people where
We've
the minute
lost
you
the
say something you don't agree
ability.
with, you're the devil. I
I
hate your
think we've
guts.
lost the ability, if we ever had it in the first place, to kind of agree to disagree. I think that's
Hmm.
quite an important point in a democracy, in a free press. We have to be able to say, you know what, I disagree with you on this one issue, but you know, on those other issues, we're all on the same side, we're all on the same team,
Right.
we have the same goals, and I just think that there is a very, very important debate to be had about open discussion and just having the ability to say, you know what, I disagree with you, but I do it in good faith. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
you're the devil. It
Right.
doesn't mean you're a sellout. It doesn't mean, you know, we just don't have that. It's immediately, oh, you say something I disagree with, you must be bought and paid off.
Right. Oh, everything. I can't believe the stuff I see. I'm like, what has happened? I'm talking with Mehdi Hasan, award-winning journalist, Zeto. If you're not signed up for Zeto, it's free. Go to Substack and sign up or go to Zeteo.com. Uh, Mehdi, what about in the you have freedom, and I know that in the corporate media world, you certainly had known for being very independent and not at all having any problem speaking truth to power and being fearless. I'm not asking for names or examples, but in the corporate media world, because we bemoan it, we sit here,
Yes.
even though I'm in the corporate media, no one says anything to us unless we get in trouble. Like I just do my show every day. I have on rule. I've had so many people on that corporate media is not having on much anymore, and I
Yeah.
still have them on to talk about issues like the Middle East. Were there times when you really butted heads, or was it more subtle? Was it more the sense like, yeah, you can do this once, but the executives don't like it, so now it's a tougher choice in the future.
Look, I will be very honest with you. For most of my 3.5 years at MSNBC, I was left alone as well. I did my thing.
Mhm.
I didn't really have to run things up the pole. They trusted me, and I think that was, I respect them for that. Like, October 7th, of course, made a lot of people very cautious, very nervous across the entire media industry, across politics, across public life. Dean, we're seeing that in college
Right.
campuses. We're seeing it everywhere, right? People kind of lost their minds in many ways. People ran for the hills in some ways. What was interesting is that, for take an issue like Israel, which is a very controversial issue for the US media. I did a lot of critical coverage of Israel and America's relation with Israel and Israel's human rights abuses for many years leading up to October the 7th without any pushback whatsoever. I grilled Israeli spokespersons in 2021. I did a long monologue on apartheid in the occupied territories, I think in 22 or 23. So, I was there doing my thing. That's not to say that people aren't always happy with everything you do. That's not to say that there aren't subtle pressures. Of course there are. And we've seen. Look, Zateo has just been reporting on CBS what's been going on at CBS. We broke the story last week that Tony DeCopel, the morning show host, who did a ridiculously aggressive and biased interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates on Palestine, where he opened by asking him, is his book the kind of book you would find in an extremist backpack? And then
Hmm.
seemed to suggest that Palestinians have brought apartheid on themselves in the West Bank, where I know your family's from, Dean.
Hmm.
That we just did a story on that and what's going on behind the scenes there, where a lot of staff super upset with Tony, with the questioning, upset that he seems to have violated some CBS editorial guidelines in terms of following the one sheets that are approved by internal standards. But what's interesting about that story is that the corporate bosses at CBS had his back throughout.
That's it.
Revealing.
They've made their choice for whatever reason. They either agree with him or they're trying to give the freedom to journalists. I don't know the answer. I just don't know. I mean, honestly, I just don't know the answer. But yeah, that was the one of the most biased interviews I've ever seen. And it's a morning show, folks. It's not
Yes.
60 Minutes where you're going to expect that. It's
No,
like
the
we're
best
gonna
part was one of the executives at CBS is like, well, this is us just speaking truth to power. We ask tough questions. Are you joking? No morning show interviews are tough interviews. That's the whole point why this one stood out, because it was so political, so partisan, so aggressive, and so personal in a way that normally they're chatting about the weather and the latest movie that someone's putting
right.
on.
Yeah, it's like, and now Ta-Nehisi Coates, and now we're going to teach you how to make chicken soup in your own house right after this. Oh my God, cupcakes for everybody. That's the kind of thing. Yeah, that was not journalism. That was activism. And if they're going to
Yeah,
allow
and the funny
activism
thing
on
is,
air,
I'm
that's
fine.
that's
I'm
different.
an opinionated person. When I was at
Right.
MSNBC, I was an opinion host.
Mhm.
I have no problem with people's opinions, but just declare them, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's all.
If Tony DeCopel had opened with, you know what, I'm super pro-Israel. My kids are Jewish. They lived in Israel on October 7th. I'm very concerned about Israel's safety. That's where I come at this from.
Mhm.
Let me now disagree with you. That would have been better had he not suggested his guest, who is a black man who came back from Palestine, is basically a terrorist. that would have been better. There was a lot of things they could have done better.
Sure.
What's interesting, though, is if people haven't read Ta-Nehisi Coates' new book, The Message, please do read it. And that interview actually vindicated many of the arguments in the book, which is that we dehumanize Palestinians. We don't give Palestinians a voice. The media is one-sided, that we don't see them as human. And actually, Tony Dokoupil in that interview vindicated much of Ta-Nehisi's thesis, ironically.
It's a great book, and we're trying to get Ta-Nehisi on the show, in fact. So let's talk about Middle East coverage. You know, I don't want to go back. I want to just talk about something that just happened. Last week, Netanyahu threatened the people of Lebanon. They don't rise up and get rid of Hezbollah, even though his own military, the superpower of the region, can't get rid of him. Then he will turn Lebanon into Gaza. Now, if any other leader of a superpower did that, it would be the U.S. building a coalition to stop that madman. But when it's Netanyahu, it's like, yawn, or here's more weapons. Yeah. It is a surreal experience to live through what we've been seeing in the last year, watching a genocide play out, watching images that look like something from World War I, but it's happened on our watch, is on this earth. But this Netanyahu thing to me was so jarring, and it got so little coverage.
I 100% agree. And the kind of impunity that's been given to Netanyahu on so many levels is so jarring, so galling, so bizarre. I mean, from a moral perspective,
right,
it is not okay for people to mass kill tens of thousands of Palestinians. And then when you're not done with that, you start mass killing thousands of Lebanese. We've got over 2,000 Lebanese dead in the last couple of weeks. Just on Monday, for your listeners and viewers, just to, if they haven't seen it, Israel bombed northern Lebanon, nothing to do with southern Lebanon, nothing to do with Hezbollah. They bombed northern Lebanon, killed a family of 23 people. PBS reported that only their bits of their bodies were left behind, including 2 babies. That is happening with our weaponry, our funding, our bombs in our name. That is Netanyahu. So morally, it's grotesque. Legally, it's fundamentally illegal under international law to invade and occupy your neighbors and to indiscriminately bomb civilian areas. It's illegal under American law. This is the debate that's going on right here, where the State Department is basically covering up the fact that internally, their own experts and USAID experts have said to Blinken, we cannot send aid to a country that's blocking aid to poor people and starving people in Gaza. America is in violation of its own law, both the Foreign Assistance Act, Dean, which says you can't send military weapons to a country that's blocking humanitarian aid from the US, which Israel is doing, and the Leahy law, which is a law that doesn't allow you to send weapons to militaries that are engaged in gross human rights abuses, which the Israeli military, of course, is in Gaza. So legally it's wrong, morally it's wrong, but here's the big one. Politically, it's insane because Benjamin Netanyahu has made a fool of Joe Biden for the last year of his presidency. He's basically wrecked Joe Biden's last year in office. There's 2 reasons why Joe Biden had to pull out. One is obviously the ill health that we saw, the kind of decline mentally, but also the fact that the base and the polls had turned against him and that he was looking weak, especially because of Netanyahu. And we now have reporting, Dean, that in private, Biden says to aides, Netanyahu wants Trump to win. So Biden is still sharp enough and not in decline that much to know that what we all know, which is that Netanyahu and the far-right Israelis want a Trump presidency. So let's just follow that logic to its conclusion. Biden knows that Netanyahu is screwing him to get Trump elected. And yet he carries on blindly backing Netanyahu. A, weird. B, doesn't that mean he's screwing over Kamala Harris's candidacy? Aren't you undermining your own candidate by supporting a foreign leader who you yourself admit wants your candidate to lose? So just from a political perspective, it makes no sense to blindly support Netanyahu. Look, Dean, you and I are grown-ups. We're not naive. America was not going to suddenly stop supporting Israel in the last few months, but certainly after October. That's not going to happen overnight. But no one's asking the United States to stop supporting Israel. What we're asking the United States government to do is stop giving Benjamin Netanyahu a blank check. Stop sending him every weapon he asks for and more. Stop sitting in silence when he does insane genocidal videos like the one you referenced. When Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi can come out publicly and attack Benjamin Netanyahu, these are 2 of the most pro-Israeli Democrats of my lifetime. When they can come out and say, Netanyahu is a real problem, he's an obstacle to peace, we need to use our leverage, which both of them have said in recent weeks and months, why can't Joe Biden and Antony Blinken? Why can't Kamala Harris?
It's a challenging thing. And why can't they? You know, yesterday, the Biden administration, at least the reporting was, they've given Israel 30 days to reverse their downward humanitarian trajectory, or else it may have implications for future weapons transfers. And we're talking about Gaza, not letting food in. You know, Vice President Harris did post online 2 days ago about UN reports that food's not getting into northern Gaza for the last 2 weeks. But I had read about that a little over a week ago in Israeli papers that the plan was to starve northern Gaza.
Yep,
And I'm
called the
like, how is
General
this not
Plan.
getting coverage in America? They've
Yes.
planned to
Isn't it
starve the
tragic?
people. They're
Isn't
using
it
food as a
tragic?
weapon of war. That's like a war crime. There's no debating. It's a war crime.
No debating. And by the way, it's already out there. The International Criminal Court chief prosecutor said in May that Israel's using food as a weapon of war, starvation as a method of war. That was one of the charges he wants to bring against Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. If the International Court will hand down arrest warrants, which they still haven't, there's something weird going on there, what pressure they're under behind the scenes, because it's been 6 months, no sign of an arrest warrant. So we know that starvation is a weapon of war. Oxfam have said it, Human Rights Watch have said it, the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor has said it. And it is a tragedy that, Vice President Harris comes out and makes a statement, which was a good statement, right? She's saying the right thing, but talk is cheap, Dean. You have the power and leverage to stop this. So there's no point just saying, as she said, international humanitarian law must be respected, which is an important thing to say, because Biden hasn't really said it. And of course, Donald Trump.
I know.
Donald Trump's never going to say it. Elephant
Right.
in the room that we don't talk
Of course.
about. The other candidate is even worse on this issue than the Democrats. She said it. The question is, and I tweeted this at the time in response to her tweet, what are you going to do about it, right? You can enforce international humanitarian law. You are the United States government. By the way, she's running, Dean, as a prosecutor. Remember, she keeps saying, I'm a prosecutor. I enforce the law. I'm against a convicted felon. Well, guess what? Netanyahu is also on trial for crimes. Netanyahu is violating domestic and international law over in Israel. America is in violation of our own law and international law. You could just say, she doesn't even have to come out and say, I'm anti-Israel. Of course not. All she has to come out and say, I support Israel, I support Palestine, I support international humanitarian law, and as president, I will enforce the law. That's all she has to say. As president, I will enforce the law. She won't say it.
Look, she can't change policy on her own as a vice president. We know that. She can lobby
That's
Biden.
Not changing policy, Dean. That's
right.
Saying,
She could change.
It's just saying,
right. No, but you're right. But
I
that's
will enforce the law.
Right. And my biggest point, I had Layla Elabed on recently, the co-founder of Uncommitted, and everyone's the same thing. A lot of the words were really good. I had the state rep on from Georgia, Rowan, and about Roman.
Roman.
Yeah, Roman. And I was having a Trump moment there. I couldn't remember the name. Tim
Cook.
But it's policy that people want to see articulated, and that's the key. And look, in the closing weeks of this campaign, she's not going to make it all about Palestine. We know it. But when she goes to Michigan and goes to other places that have big populations that are concerned about this, she can articulate a policy difference that's different from me than Biden. And that will get a lot of press in our communities. Now, at this point, some will say it's too late. But some will say it's
Muslims. Everyone wants to change candidate.
Right. I mean, 80% of Democrats wanted a ceasefire in November, December, within a few months of seeing the loss of life, they were like, wow, that was horrific. So it wasn't new to that. I'm talking about Mehdi Hasan. So Mehdi, do you think Democratic officials were taken by surprise by the support, a broad-based support, not just Muslims and Arabs, young people, Black Americans, Latinos called? But when you see the data, it really is it is the Obama coalition. It's the Democratic coalition that was outraged by what they were seeing in Gaza that Netanyahu was doing. Do you think they were taken by surprise by how vocal people were?
Yeah, I think so, but they haven't really reacted in the way you might expect politicians to act in an election. This is what's so frustrating. This is an election. If this was happening in a non-election, you'd be like, okay, fine, they're ignoring the public. We know that our democracy is broken. We know that politicians ignore the will of the people. We know that big money's corrupted Congress, all of that stuff. But it's an election year. You're literally risking your own careers. Joe Biden risked his entire presidency, the stain that will be on his legacy as a president who was complicit in genocide. Kamala Harris is risking her own election victory and American democracy, right? These same Democrats, Dean, tell us, rightly in my view, that democracy is on the line in November, right? That there's an existential threat on the other side. So then why the hell are you risking it all for Benjamin Netanyahu? It makes no sense to me. It is tragic to see them ignoring the Democratic base. I'm delighted to see that the Democratic base has got this one right from the very beginning, as you say, from November, December. We did a poll for Zeto back in, I think, April, May, which showed 50% of Democrats think it's a genocide, not just
I remember that.
Like Democrats take very strong views on this issue. Plenty of young American liberal Jews are also very anti-Israel, very anti this war. So I think the liberal left, ordinary Americans get it. And that fills me with some hope and happiness, if I can use that word, about such an unhappy situation. Of course, you look at the Republican side and it confirms every bias you may have against the Republicans. They don't give a shit about Palestinian life. They don't
Oh
give a shit
no.
about Arab life. They don't want any Palestinian refugees here. They would love for Netanyahu to finish the job. Many of them are Christian evangelicals who think that, killing lots of Palestinians and strengthening Israel brings back Jesus much sooner. So there's a lot of racial and religious weirdness on the other side. But yeah, it is very sad to see the Democratic Party ignoring the base. And one of the main reasons, Dean, that they're able to ignore that, to go back to the start of our discussion, is because the media is on side. The media is not putting the same pressure on the Democrats that they would if it was another issue like immigration or Ukraine. When it's Gaza, there isn't the parallel media pressure to go with the public pressure. You mentioned it a moment ago. Isn't it tragic that to find out the horrors of what Israel is up to, you have a better chance of finding them out in Israeli newspapers like Haaretz than in American newspapers like the Post or the Times, which have done good reporting on Gaza, including this week. The New York Times has a shocking piece about Israeli soldiers using Palestinians as human shields, by the way, having ranted for a year that Hamas uses human shields. Guess what? Every accusation is a confession. The Israeli military uses Palestinians as human shields. So there is the odd good reporting, but overall, yeah, you don't get a sense from the American media as to how bad it is on the ground in Gaza and Lebanon, and to how complicit we are. I think there's a lot of Americans who just don't get that this is our war as much as it is Israel's war. Israel couldn't fight this war, couldn't execute this genocide if it wasn't for American funding and armaments.
And I've had Harrison Mann on, the former major who retired, who said this could have ended. We could have ended it. And by the way, this idea of using Palestinians as human shields is not new. My cousins, who are now in their 50s, when they were telling me decades ago, they were strapped to the front of Israeli Jeeps in the West Bank to protect their Jeeps so no one would throw stones at it. They literally, just random, they would just pick you. You're a young guy, they would grab you and do it. They would, put people in prison for periods of time just because of their age and their religion, frankly. I mean, that's what it was. And their skin color. That's the reality of the world.
If you read the Times piece, and I urge your listeners, readers too, I mean, they even have different names of insects for which Palestinians they use as human shields. So if you're a Palestinian who's been picked up in Gaza and turned into a human shield, they are sent into booby-trapped tunnels. Often they're sent in wearing Israeli military uniforms so that Hamas will shoot them thinking they're Israeli. They're called mosquitoes. And if they're Palestinians brought from outside of Gaza who are detainees in a prison outside of Gaza, they're called wasps. So they even, you want to talk about dehumanization. Not only are they treating these people as less than animals, by the way, one Israeli soldier told Haaretz, we send the Palestinians into the booby trap tunnels because we lost a lot of our dogs died. So that just tells you where Palestinians fit in the hierarchy, in the view of the Israeli military. And so, the Israeli military that we fund and arm, I will say again.
I know. Very last thing, and it's intra-Muslim and more broadly with the Arab community, even though you're not of Arab heritage, but the idea of voting in 2024. You just did a really compelling video on it. I saw that. I'm not trying to get anyone angry at anyone here, but the idea that, look, I have people call the show all the time, and I make the compelling argument that I can to my fellow Democrats that Donald Trump's an existential threat to everything we believe in, including Palestinians. I've said this on Ali Vel's show, I think with you there. I said, Donald Trump, Miriam Adelson just gave $100 million to Donald Trump to annex the West Bank. That's the goal. If he wins, my family's gone. They're ethnically cleansed, and the world will just yawn as they did with Gaza. That's the reality of the world we live in. So to me, but the other point, and I think you were making this too, we are part of a bigger picture. I always talk about Martin Luther King, that we are part of this mutual garment of destiny, that if I turn my back on all these other communities that are going to suffer, and they view us as responsible, and then and Trump gets in and punishes them and then comes for us and they go help us, like, but you didn't help us. You turn your back. So like somehow they're going to come and help us when we turn our back on them. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
It's a very good point, Dean. And there's a lot of interlinked arguments here. And just, I mean, look, we'd have to worry about people getting angry. People are already angry. We've got 3 weeks of anger to go. That's why I need this election to be over. People are super angry. To quote Bruce Banner, the Hulk, I'm always angry. That feels like where we're at the moment. There's a lot of anger. It's justifiable anger, right? People are upset and angry to see these scenes on their phones every day of mass carnage in Gaza and now in Lebanon and in parts of the West Bank, funded and armed by the United States. The issue, of course, is for me, and why I made this 9-minute video online, which got some people upset. I'm not telling you people to vote for Harris. That's not my job. I'm not saying go rah, 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 rah. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not telling you to vote for Kamala Harris. What I am saying is we just need to understand that when we do go to vote, it's a little bit more complicated than some people online might suggest. Some people online are saying, punish the Dems. Fine, we should punish the Dems. That's what elections are for. You punish the incumbents when they do bad things. I'm all for it. But it's a two-party system. When you punish the Dems, you reward Donald Trump. Is that what we want to do? Maybe you do. but at least have the discussion. Maybe, Dean, you're shaking your head, but there are some people who say, no, I don't care if Trump wins. Biden and Harris have to lose because of what they've done in Gaza. And I get that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I completely get where they're coming from.
Sure.
All I want some honesty. Just admit that that is the choice. There are some people who discuss this election as if it's just Harris running in a vacuum. No, it's Harris or Trump. And some people say, what about Jill Stein? Vote for Jill Stein, but she can't win, right? And again, people get mad at me when I say that. That's not my fault. Don't shoot me for talking math, right? She's at 2%. She can't win. So in January, on January 20th, 2025, one of only two people will be president, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. And if you care about the people of Gaza, you have to ask who will be better or worse for Gaza. I do believe Trump is worse. People say, oh, no, he's worse. This is an anti-Palestinian racist who uses Palestinian as a smear, who's going to put Jared Kushner in the White House, who's best pals with Netanyahu and said recently, finish the job, who's going to make David Friedman his ambassador again. David Friedman, who believes in annexing the West Bank and doesn't believe in any kind of Palestinian sovereignty, who is going to give some of the worst people in the Middle East complete freedom to do what they want. Netanyahu and his coalition, Dean, are saying openly they want Trump as president. My view is if Netanyahu wants something, I probably want the opposite. Sorry. And, you know, in general, this is a guy who's talked recently about bombing Iranian nuclear facilities. And as you say, it's not even just about Gaza. It's about the future of our climate, the future of American democracy, the future of world peace. Do I want Donald J. Trump, an incoherent, rambling, unhinged, racist, white supremacist, narcissistic, petty, petulant man in decline in charge of nuclear weapons? No, I do not, Dean.
I agree with you, Mehdi. Mehdi, it was great catching up with you, especially in the close proximity to the election. Zeto, it's on Substack. Do you recommend people go to Zeteo.com or go to Substack and look
I
up
think Zeteo.com, Zeteo.com.
Thank you, brother. It was great chatting with you. You did a great job in that debate. I was honored to ask that one question.
I look forward to have you there. Yeah, people should check out Dean and me at a debate in New York for Open to Debate, which was on this very subject to the Middle East.
But Mehdi, 95%, I asked one question. But thanks, Mehdi. Great seeing you, brother. Take care. Salams.